And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. So today's podcast is going to be fun because it's going to be all about speaking, and I get so many questions and so many people that have so many thoughts around speaking that might not be accurate, but everybody wants to speak, and I have sort of the perfect guest on to answer all your issues today. So, Jane Atkinson has been helping speakers catapult their career for nearly 30 years. She's the author of The Wealthy Speaker 2.0, the Epic Keynote, and the Wealthy Speaker Daily Success Planner and Journal. And then she has a company called Jane's Wealthy Speaker University, which offers courses and masterminds and coaching. So, if ever there were an expert on how to sort of monetize and dive into speaking, it's Jane. So, welcome aboard, Jane.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Peter. Thank you.
Cool. So let's start with busting some myths because I think it might be fun.
Sure.
Let's talk about maybe to start with the difference today between the importance of agents today and how important that was 10 or 15 years ago. So we love agents. It's not pro or anti, but just the reality of where the market's going.
Well, I've always talked, I actually started my career as an agent for speakers. That was the first 15 of my 30-year history.
Yep.
And what I think the myth is that it's easy to get an agent and that relationship is an easy one. And it's really not. It's a very difficult relationship to both get and to have it work out because a lot of people don't know how to sell speakers. That's what we're selling here. Now, there's lots and lots of book agents out there.
Yep.
There's lots of agents for other things, but for some reason, the industry there's like a handful of really good agents, and they're not going to be interested in bringing someone up from zero to wherever they would like to go.
So let's talk about that because everybody has to start somewhere,
Hmm.
right? And it's usually
Exactly.
not, and unless you were president of the United States was your previous job, you're not
Yes.
going to start at that, $250,000 level. So if you were president, that's a good way to go, and a couple exceptions there. But
Not
if
the
you,
easiest path.
yeah, right. There's probably shorter lines between A and B. But
Yeah.
let's say you're sort of more the classic. You're a great academic, you're an author, you're a consultant. You're going to start at 5 and go to 10, and sort of the typical route. How does that appeal to an agent or not? Right. So even if you're a rock star, even if it looks like that's an up and comer, tell me what's going through the mind of an agent when they're sniffing somebody out to
Sure.
invest their time in.
And I used to do this because I ran the exclusives division for a speakers bureau out of Dallas. And so I would sniff people out. And what we were looking for was what we'd call phone ringers,
Yep.
people who would make the telephone ring, not people who we had to push up to this level of success and, start from the beginning and go. And so that's where I think most people think, well, I'll just throw some money at this problem. But it's not typically a relationship that you can really do that for. You really have, unless you find somebody in your own world. I mean, maybe there's somebody who knows you,
Sure.
who sat in your audiences and they really loved what you had to say and they're getting ready to do a job change and you can train them up. But it takes a lot of time and energy on the front end. It's like a
Sure.
marriage, and it takes a lot of time and energy and work in order to really bring them up to speed. And frankly, no one should be able to sell you like you.
So a couple of things that you put out there. First is how do I make the phone ring? So if I'm sitting listening to this, I'm going, okay, so I want to make myself attractive to an agent, and I'm going to tell them I'm a phone ringer. Well, what am I doing to support that claim?
Well, I think there's a whole process that we have in the Wealthy Speaker 2.0 of ready, aim, fire.
Right.
You have a crystal clear in the ready phase. We get crystal clear on what we're selling, and we develop what we would call a promise from that. That's language that will allow people to understand immediately how you're going to help them from the platform. In the
Okay.
aim stage, we make sure that our website speaks to that promise, and then we roll it out and we start firing. And this is, I'm really stripping this down for you just from
Sure.
a time perspective, but the whole fire process really probably it takes 1 to 3 years to start to see all of the seeds that you've planted come
So
to
I want to
harvest.
just pause you there because it's a critical point that you make. So the typical sort of scenario that I see is someone Someone might come to us and maybe they've been doing some speaking, a little bit of speaking. They've got a book coming out soon. And like everybody else today, they're impatient. Hey, I want to be speaking more and I want to do that in 3 months. And I'm always
Sure.
like, well, that's not going to happen because oftentimes they don't understand sort of the buying cycle. Speaking is not something that somebody buys today because they need it next week. It's a
Right.
6 month lead time, a year lead time, and they're fairly significant lead times, right? And even if I was going to book you now for next year and you don't have much of a track record, you got to build that track record. So hence your 1 to 3 year sort of statement there, which I think is right.
Yeah, I have a client, Frank, who's been planting seeds now for very consistently for about 6 months, and he's finally starting to get some traction.
Yep.
And what you have to recognize is kind of what your selling superpower is. He recognized that he was better on the phone. He talks on
Okay.
sales and he is a sales guy. And so when he could get people on the phone, he could move it forward. Other people's sales superpowers are email. They're really good. They've
Sure.
got a really
Sure.
nice short and sweet email that really works for them. One of my clients, Kendra Hall, she sent out 600 emails as the launch of her
Right.
career and saw that help her gain traction because they were very focused.
Yep.
Some people, networking is the way to go because they're really good in a room face to face with people. And so that's the way that they're going to go about it.
Yep.
So you really have to recognize which way you want to go and then just start planting seeds.
Cool. So I've got a million questions here. So let me start with one, and then I've got a couple others. So there's always this sort of lack of alignment between a speaker and the agent, and then some of that is just speakers are doing lots and lots of other things. They might be consulting, they might be selling learning systems, whatever. But the speaking agent is only going to get compensated during the course of the relationship where they're selling speeches, and that's just is what it is, right? Your local realtor might love you, but they don't really care about anything else but buying or selling your home.
Right.
So let's talk about sort of the exclusive, non-exclusive piece, because I think that's a big place
Sure.
where people get stuck. They're not sure. But let's talk about sort of the exclusivity, non-exclusivity, when to go there, when not to go there.
Sure.
How would you help us navigate that?
The way that we see that most often is when a speakers bureau would ask you to go exclusive
Yes.
with them. And so what I would say to a client is, well, did the speakers bureau put all of the engagements on your board last year or were half of them some from somewhere else? Because if they were other bureaus that were booking you, they are in jeopardy of going away if you go exclusive with a bureau. There's a lot of bureaus who have really solid relationships with other bureaus, but when they co-broker, they don't love it because why? Then you have to share the lead.
Well, and you're doing the same work for half the money, right? So if I have a
And you
choice,
have to share
yeah,
the commission. So
right,
if I have speaker A who's a direct piece of business for me as the bureau versus speaker B who's a co-broker, then it's going to be less likely that I'll really push speaker B to my client because I don't want to co-broker. Now, you're going to have to do that on celebrities. A
sure,
lot of
yeah,
them
yeah,
are
right.
represented, they have representation, and there's just no way around that. And I think that if you have your determining factor as to whether or not to go exclusive with someone is, can they provide you with all the business you want?
Right. And I think that's 100% right. I have clients that for whatever reason say, "Listen, I only want to speak 3 times a month. Here's my fee. I happen to have an exclusive with this agency. They're lovely to work with. They're meeting all my needs, etc." Then I have others that say, "Listen, I want to do this 100 times, a
Mhm.
year." It wouldn't make sense in that circumstance unless they're generating so much business that they're overflowing. Really depends on your need.
And most bureaus don't require you to be
Sure.
exclusive with them. That's just become a part of the business model. And so I would just try to work around it as best you can and say, hey, let's see if you can get me some bookings
Right.
and we'll see how it goes. And try for the non exclusive relationship. If you have some really amazing clients that keep coming back to you year after year, you don't want to have to be handing that business over to somebody else. So make sure you take pockets of your business out of the arrangement
Right. So you
to
can do
keep
carve outs, and I
so
think
that
people
you
forget
yeah,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So that
Yeah.
you can keep those direct for you.
Awesome. So you mentioned earlier, this is my next question here, of selling you. So there's really two schools of thoughts here. One school of thought says, hey, I can sell me better than anybody else because I am me, right? And nobody's going to convey that as well as I can, the energy, the passion, the commitment, etc. Asterisk, it gets a little funky, awkward, weird to talk about money when you're the provider as well as the product. So
Right.
sort of weigh those two odds for us.
Well, I know that people feel weird about delving down the fee conversations, but they need to be had, and they need to be have had from a place of power.
Yes.
So, for instance, when the client asks you your fee, and let's say your fee is $10,000, you say, my fee is $10,000 and I travel from Toronto, boom. And then you be quiet.
Right.
Like that's all there is to it. We don't want to have any kind of and or but however, after that conversation. And I think that that's a learned thing for you is to really stand tall and powerful in your fees, and the way to do that, the way to get the confidence to do that is be really, really crystal clear on what the benefits of your work are. And that's where we get into thought leadership, really understanding how to explain your thought leadership to
Exactly.
other people is going to be key there. And so so let's say in a sales conversation, you've talked through with them, you've got the client whooped up about working with you, and then they say, "Well, how much is this gonna cost me?" And you say it. You can either let the little green monster on your shoulder drive the bus, who's saying, "Oh, they're never gonna pay you that much."
Yeah.
Or, my little green monster says, "You know what? This is pretty damn cheap," and compared
Right.
to a lot of other things out there, like, I really have my little green monster convinced that people are getting a bargain, and I'm hoping that that conveys when we're having that conversation about the
Well, and
dollars.
where I was going is the awkwardness of that. So I agree with you 1,000%. Say it with confidence because there's a difference
Mhm.
between saying my fee is $10,000 and plus travel from Toronto, and it's $10,000, but leaving it open for
Yeah,
you.
negotiation.
Well, and don't negotiate against yourself. That's sort of silly. And if you don't sound confident conveying that, you left it up for grabs. The point I was making is let's say you started that sales call with the client around, oh, here's your event, and oh, it's sales, great. I do a lot in sales, and what are the struggles they're having? Oh, great, I have some modules on that. And let me give you, and it's very of service, right? You're trying to what would success look like for you at this event? Oh, good, I have some stuff to do that, and then you move into the money side, and
Right.
it's not that it immediately puts it in an us versus them versus an of service to. What I have found is when ideally you want to get to a place in your career where you can say, you know what? I don't even know what my fee structure. I mean, you might not use those words, but you're going to have to talk with so and so. They take care of all the financials and contracting and logistics. I don't
Right.
deal with those issues. Almost like it's I don't say beneath you, but you just say you put the wall up and go, yeah, I that's not my part of the business. My job is to give you a great
Some
speech.
people who don't have the either the belief or the gumption to talk
Yep.
through that with the clients, they need to do that. My recommendation is that you figure out a way to do it for yourself, because not everybody has that somebody to pass the ball to.
Yep.
And I think when it comes to closing, if you stop short of talking about the money, then you may not be actually closing the business. And, if it falls apart because it landed in somebody else's corner, then you can't really blame that other person, I don't think.
Sure.
So, my goal is for people to be able to do it for themselves.
Well, I think I think the other side of that piece is get that money question out on the table early because you don't want to engage in three or four conversations. You're a $20,000
Sure.
speaker, and because you didn't want to go there, this but
You
our
know,
budget's 3,000, and
Yeah, a good way to do that is to look at who they had last year,
right, great
and
point.
when you know your market well enough, you go, "Oh, okay, they had Dan Thurman last year. All right, I know they're at least at 10 to 15."
Yeah, good
So
point. Good point.
you can mentally, continue on with the conversation just through a little bit of research. So that's handy.
Awesome. So I want to pivot a little bit to what a speaker or aspiring speaker or someone that wants to do more speaking can be doing today tactically to generate interest and leads directly. Because obviously, there's only two ways to do this, right? You've got the bureaus. Well, three ways. You've got the bureaus, your personal network referrals, and then you've got generating net new interest. So talk to me specifically around what are people doing? Because the barrier to entry to be a speaker is virtually zero, right? Most people have a voice and can put up a website in 5 minutes. But how do you really start to get people to come to you and
Sure.
walk us through that a little bit, Kim?
Well, there's lots of different ways to do it. And I think that we have to first consider that it is a business. So you want to start your business like any business with, some structure in place, some infrastructure. So we want to establish what our brand is and then start getting our brand out there on social media. We might recommend that you start doing video on social media just to get you in front of the camera so that people can start to get a flavor for you. I just finished a podcast talking about all the different ways that we can put video out there in order to get speaking engagements. We can be writing on our topic, making sure that our thought leadership is really
Yep.
going out there. Because here's the thing, if I'm looking at spending some dollars on you, I'm going to do my homework and I'm going to research your social footprint. I'm
Sure.
gonna look at your website. I'm going to see when your latest blog post
Yep.
was and what the topics are and how on topic you are and how often you veer. I'm going to be looking at all of that in order to see whether or not you're a good fit for my event. And that's why it takes some time to establish this credibility. If you've got a book coming out before all of this happens, even better. That raises up your level of credibility immediately.
Excellent. And it's got to be consistent, right? So I love what you said in terms of think of it as a business. So when you think of it as a business, let's sort of push on that for a little bit. Let's say you're a $10,000 speaker, right? So the one question might be, what would you pay from a sales and marketing perspective to acquire a net new speech? Well, we know in the speaking agent world, that's going to be in the 20-25% range. So let's use that as sort of your baseline number that you might lose and maybe use, and you might want to get it less than that. So actually what you need to be thinking about is, how can I invest somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 to find each new deal, right? And then use the metrics and the tools to go backwards there. Can you touch on that for a little bit?
That's a very interesting observation. And a lot of people, I think, have been hesitant on the social media front anyway to kind of pay to play. Now you're not going to get anything from Facebook if you don't have money in the game. And so the same is getting more so with all of the other social
Sure.
media methodology. So I think that you might want to be ready to invest some money in getting your name out there. But a lot of people can do things kind of simultaneously. Let's say you have a day job and you're doing the speaking as a side hustle. You can be building your whole portfolio and platform of thought leadership while you're still at your job. You can be
Sure.
posting free blog posts on LinkedIn every week for a period of time so that you're establishing this thought leadership. So I'm not sure that it's like, okay, well, let me just throw $1,000 over here. I think you're going to see that that money is all kind of spread out. And
Well, I'm not saying the money is just spent on Facebook, but what I'm saying is, so let's say my goal was to do 10 speeches at 10,000 bucks next year, $100,000. If I'm not prepared to spend 10, 15,000, whatever on marketing, then I'm missing the point, right? Because if I were to open a cafe in my town, I'd have a marketing budget. If I were to open a
for
consulting business,
sure.
it's going to be a marketing budget. And my point is, I think all too often people think, well, speaking's great because I get paid all this money to do an hour's worth of work. They
Yeah,
don't see.
but there's nothing
Right.
else I need to spend money on. Well, you need a website, and you need a
Exactly.
good website, and you need a video, and eventually you're gonna need a good video, and you're gonna need probably some help in getting your
Sure.
graphics and all the logos and things like that set up. So, absolutely, there's going to be some startup costs, and whether or not you have kind of ongoing costs, my monthly costs have gone from, maybe when I was in the early days of my business, $1,000 or $2,000 a month. They've probably quadrupled since then because I'm investing in lots of different things that
Sure.
take me to those monthly costs, including Facebook advertising on very
Right.
specific outbound efforts.
Yep. Totally. Well, this has been great. Lots of great, solid tactical information. Any parting words of wisdom to those that want to speak
Well,
more?
one of the things that we didn't really cover was the idea of picking a lane. And when we talk about
Yep.
picking a lane, we're really talking about topically speaking. So if you've written a book, hopefully that's what you want to speak about, and becoming known for one thing. So just maybe ask yourself the question, what do I want to be known for 5 years from now? And that's what all of your output and outreach is going to be about. Stick in
Yeah,
that
I
one lane
agree.
will be much, much more of a service to your thought leadership than anything else.
I agree with that 100%. I think the struggle for many is that there's so many things they could talk about.
Exactly.
Um, I call it with my clients. We go through the solve for X exercise of, well, you want to be the X man or the X woman. What is that? And oftentimes it's not an additive activity; it's a reductive activity. Say, okay, well, you could do this and you could do that.
Yes.
What's the one thing that you want to put your flag in the ground and say, I'm going to kick ass at this better than anybody? And that's what I want to be known as, and the branding supports that and all that. So it's a
Love it.
great point there.
Love
Well,
it. Definitely. And what we try to do when we're picking a lane is we try to come to the crossroads where passion and profits will meet.
yes,
Something
good
you can
point.
get paid for, but something you're going to be passionate about for a long time as well.
Exactly. Well, this has been great. I appreciate all that you shared with us and myself and the listeners today. Lots for folks to learn, and we will talk again soon. Thank you so much for joining us, Jane.
Thank you.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.